we are live. Can you hear that?
I can.
We have a big buzzing sound going on here. So it's Polly and Rick here. We are on the incredible Sunday night show tonight. Live, we have two wonderful guests, and we're going to hear from a wee bit about you both. I'm going to do your intro. I'll introduce you both. Introducing Dr. Ron Lawson and Dave Algeo, aka the Sprout Guy. Dave, you're known. We'll start with you.
Yeah,
happy with that?
sure.
Okay, is this your first time on radio?
No.
You've been on radio before. Okay, so Dave, I don't know where to begin. The Sprout Guy, a former police officer, and now a speaker, trainer, and coach. Dave has years of experience helping people deal with stress and cope with, more positively with, stress in everyday life, with leaders and managers, and you help build resilient and effective teams. Dave, you're very well known for your novel Sprouts and Cabbages. Do you want to say a wee bit more about that? It's a metaphor, isn't it?
It is. And I had to lean into the Sprout Guy because it was either that or the Cabbage Man. So I went with Sprouts. I think that's a better one. It comes from, I'm fascinated with stress and coping and how we cope under pressure, and the fact that we can slide into negative coping. For me, alcohol and silence were classic coping strategies.
Yes.
They're good, they're coping strategies, just not good ones. But when I was reading about it, I had this image, and this is where I kind of show my age. I was reading about stress and the impact on the human being, when we're coping with all sorts. And into my head popped Crackerjack. And there'll be one or two people out there shouting back, Crackerjack on the microphone.
It's fine. This idea.
Crackerjack, yeah. And in that, there was a game called Cabbages and Kings. I used to get a few kids on, they'd be asked questions and to win prizes, they get it right, then they get a toy and they'd have to hold the toy. And if you get a few more right, you'd end up with hopefully a pile of toys. And if you got a question wrong, you got a cabbage. 3 cabbages and you were out. So you'd whittle down to this last kid who's holding this pile of cabbages, desperately trying not to drop anything. And it was just fixed in my head that is a brilliant analogy for good stress, bad stress, and how the bad stress outweighs the good stress. And you can, you lose sight of the toys, and all you can see is cabbages, all you can smell is cabbages, and how stress can almost change you over time and lead to mental health issues, etc. So I kind of tried it out. God, it must be 16 odd years ago. And it went down really well. And over the years, the cabbages, then I introduced the sprouts, because the sprouts for me are the key. The sprouts are the small sprout-sized chunks of time or habits or behaviour that help you deal with the cabbages, because you're not going to put a whole cabbage. I'm going to take this metaphor ridiculously far, but if I made cabbage soup with a cabbage, I'm not going to put the whole cabbage in a pan. I'm going to slice, dice and chunk it into smaller bits and cook it that way. Slice, dice and chunk your problem down to sprout-sized chunk and sweat those sprouts.
Love it.
That's how you make the changes, and that's how you not only that but achieve a goal as well. If you do couch to 5k or want to run a marathon, you've got to run out, do 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, to do that. Sweating the sprouts. So that's really where it came from.
And is this it's such a relatable metaphor, isn't it? People, I can imagine that was written down really well, and that people kind of find that as a really helpful way to understand how they can apply strategies for life. Yeah. And to be fair, I'm just obsessed with sprouts now. The more I think about it, the more I work on it, the more I realise it's all sprouts. It's all about the sprouts.
All sprouts.
And do you practice what you preach?
Well, that's the thing. That's a good point, because I don't set myself up as an expert, as in, follow my 6 steps, you sorted. I'm a work in progress, and I struggle with this.
Yes.
And I think that's why, for me, I always go back to the sprout. I always say to myself, and I say to audiences, is if in doubt, go sprout. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're struggling, if you really don't know what to do, you go sprout-sized. You do something small that gives you a sense of control, a small win, or even a small amount of time working on something. There's a win for you,
Lovely.
So it's effectively a bit like a building block.
Yeah.
You're adding to it all the time.
Yeah. Or taking away. If you're dealing with a stressor, you slice and dice and get rid of those sprouts. But you're right, in terms of building to something, the every journey starts with the first step, that kind of thing. You are building your sprouts.
And I guess the sprout helps you understand it a little better. So you're not trying to take the whole cabbage.
Absolutely.
You're having an element of it, and you move on once you get it.
Yeah. And that's such an important thing, because how many of us have goals and ambitions and dreams, and also big challenges. And we can either think, oh, it's too big, it's too far, or this is too much, I've got too much to deal with. And actually, if we come back to the sprout and just focus on sweating a sprout, we can get that sense of inner, that better sense of confidence in ourselves and achieve without necessarily feeling overwhelmed and overloaded by the sprouts, the cabbages, sorry. That big thing I'm working towards, I need to get off my plate.
And I think what tends to happen with any objective or someone who sets a goal, it's that need to get there as quick as they can. Yeah. And that's where I think a lot of people fall off, either because it's not working or the disappointment of not getting to where you need to be.
Yeah. And I do a lot of work in midlife. I've got a podcast, Midlife Reshape, and I work a lot with individuals around that health transformation, people with yo-yo diet and that kind of thing. And the big thing is we go for the quick fix or the all or nothing, the extreme whatever, and we don't stick to it because we get overwhelmed and life kicks back in. But if we can just treat it like, you know what, this is not about the cabbage, it's about the sprouts. What daily sprout-sized habits going to build into my life, and what ones can I build out? I can then start to just enjoy the sprout, enjoy sweating the sprout for its own sake, whether it's exercise, a walk, eating a particular kind of food, whatever it is. It's enjoying the sprouts.
And what do you see is the biggest challenge within that, in terms of getting people to buy into the sprout concept?
I think, well, there's two bits, and I think people, as you said, they get the idea, but when you start to work with it, two things. One is the sprout is small, and what's the point? What difference is that going to make? That is a real challenge. And I think you kind of have to have a little bit of faith, but also look at examples. There are numerous examples of people who've achieved the most amazing things by sweating the sprouts, by doing a little bit every day. That's how musicians practice. I mean, Ron, you talk about your music, your all sorts of your musical work. It's about the practice and the small chunks of time that build up. It's the small bits that win. So it's about convincing people of that.
And how does the individual evaluate the success of what they're buying into? What's the process of evaluation?
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on the goal, doesn't it? But it's about, well, there's two ways to look at it. What is my cabbage, my goal? Yeah. And I'm going to talk about the goal because you've got the stressor as well, because the success might be I've chunked down and finished and got rid of that stressor,
right?
That project that was weighing us down. Or my goal is to run a marathon. You've achieved it that way. You might have a program that helps you see the milestones along the way. But ultimately, if you come down and celebrate the actual sweating of the sprout,
right,
that's something you can evaluate. That's a win. Because how often is it that we set a goal, we work towards it, but life takes you off somewhere else? But if we keep going, the success isn't the exact goal you've set. It's moving on and changing yourself as you in that journey. So if you're in that sprout size, that celebrate the sprouts, that's your evaluation almost. Like I've won today. I call it a daily act of defiance. What's one thing that you can do every day that you don't want to do, but it's sprout sized enough that it's not overwhelming and you will do it? And if you can just do that, so I can't be bothered out, but I'm going to get out for 10 minutes walk, and whatever the weather, no matter how I feel, I'm going to do that. That is a success. If you do it, you've sweated that sprout. That is something to succeed. So you can evaluate on that as well as potentially the longer term results, which might lead to, I've had a client who's started out walking to the end of a street and ended up losing 9 stone. Now it wasn't just through walking, but it was the start of the journey. Do you know what I mean? So
wonderful.
I also think it comes down to motivation. Let's take the simple diet, for example. Every new year, new year, new body, new attitude.
A sprout's not just for Christmas.
Well, exactly, that's my point. And I think there'll be a lot of our listeners tonight will think, well, my motivation was there in the beginning. Maybe I didn't get the success I was looking for, and that motivation disappears because there is a distraction. And that distraction is the next piece of motivation to do something different. So I guess my question in terms of evaluation comes from how you keep that individual motivated.
Yeah, well, there's two sides to it. I often think motivation is a bit, you can feel really motivated, and I often say, don't worry, it'll pass, because you will lose the motivation. It will pass and mundane life will get in. So it's a bit like first gear in a car. You want motivation to get you going, but you need the sprouts and the commitment to the habits, and they need to be small enough that you'll do them anyway, even if you're not motivated.
It's like the minimum viable commitment, isn't it? It's like, what's the minimum you can do if your life depended on it?
Yeah, But you do need motivation in the long term, because you need to come back to, right, what I say is, don't dwell in the cabbage. Don't dwell in how many cabbages you've got, how many stresses or goals you've got. Check in every so often to see how am I doing, but come back to the sprout, because the sprout is it's all about headspace. You know, if your head is crammed full of cabbages, your brain is a rubbish cabbage storage device. Let's be right, it's rubbish at it. But if we can free that from the cabbages and just make it concentrate on 2 or 3 key sprout-sized things you'll commit to every day, like the Meatloaf song says, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. If you get 2, there's a win, and that can help boost your motivation. And actually, what we know about the brain is there's parts of the brain that actually, if we do these mini sprout-sized difficult things, you can develop that sense of will, that strength of will, the determination muscle, if you like. That's oversimplification, but that's pretty much what you do, you know.
I often think about will, skill and drill.
Yeah.
It's like the will is the motivation, the skill is the practice, and the drill is the practice, and the skill is making sure you're equipped for all of the things you do, and that's what you're helping people do. And that's,
can I pinch that?
Yes, have it. Moving on, Ron, can we talk to you?
Of course you can.
So we've got Ron and Dave in the house together, and they're looking very smart. I actually think they dressed for radio. In fact, Ron told me he actually got a haircut especially for the radio. He did. That's what he told me.
It's a cracking haircut.
It's a crack to the bone. Yes.
So Ron, I like to call you Dr. Ron because I'm proud of that. You know, but you always go, stop it, don't do it. But you are Dr. Ron Lawson. I'm just going to read this out. A leading academic and practicing executive coach, master NLP practitioner, and accomplished artist. There's so much to say about you. So you got your MBA and your doctorate in the study of, I don't even know if I can say this, transformative reflection in professional education.
Well said.
So you're an academic. But then there's that other side of you that really, like, you're really passionate about creativity, art, the arts. You've been talking about drumming, you've been talking about sculpture, and I know there's so much more to you, but you're also a bushcraft and survival trainer. Oh my goodness gracious, that's like a lot of stuff.
When you put it like that, Polly, yes.
I know. Sometimes you have to hear someone else say things about you.
I've got lots of
realise-
sprouts on the go.
Yeah, I've got lots of feathers in your sprout, lots of sprouts in your, something like that. So yeah, tell us, you know, will you say a wee bit about, you know,
Yes, certainly.
how you became someone who does all this wonderful stuff?
Well, like Dave, I think we've experienced life a lot, haven't we, my friend? I'm an ex-cop as well. Yeah, and we've seen some of the really positive sides of life and some of the really negative sides of life and some of the things that cause that negativity. And I think we both share a passion to help people overcome those limiting beliefs, those challenges, to have a better life. And I've been so lucky that I've been able to combine what I do, my passion. When I was a kid, Polly, all I ever wanted to be was an artist like my dad. He was a lovely amateur artist.
Amazing.
And a drummer, a rock star like my big brother. He was we lost him last year, unfortunately, bless him. But he was a drummer in a band, and that was my ambition. You know, it's took me a long time, but yeah, that's what I'm doing. And I'm lucky enough to manage to combine what I teach with what I do. So I take an arts-based approach to help people look at things differently. You know, Dave's talked about the metaphor of the sprouts and the cabbages, and I use art to get people to create artifacts to help them reflect, you know, and using any artistic medium of their choice, whether it's interpretive dance or whether it's a drawing or a sculpture. And it tends to put people into a more playful mindset to be able to make the changes and see things from a different perspective. I think which is always useful.
Creativity unlocks doors, doesn't it? But
it does.
But how many people do you help that say, "Oh, I'm not creative"? Does that happen? Because I think that children are encouraged to play and be creative, and there comes a point where it's almost kind of discouraged if it's not something you're good at. I think is that. What's your experience with people? I
find it all the time.
Yeah.
Probably like engineers are a lot of themselves. I've been an engineer myself as well.
Yes.
I'm an engineer. I'm not creative. Most creative people I know are engineers. You know, but it's the perspective they've had, and people say I can't draw. And when someone says they can't draw, and when they draw like a 12-year-old. You know, there's no surprise in that, because that's when they stopped.
Yeah.
at school
course.
when they showed an aptitude for the sciences, maths, physics, chemistry, or what have you. They were never mind with this arty nonsense.
Yeah.
They're honed down, and they've still maintained that level of confidence in their artistic ability. But you know, I don't even like using the term artistic ability or talent. It's in us all. If you can sign your name, you can.
Absolutely.
You know.
I always think when people say, "Oh, I'm not adventurous" or "I'm not creative," it's like, no. The question is, in what way are you
Yeah.
creative or adventurous? Because it can look really different, can't it? And I guess that's what you're helping people uncover.
Yeah, absolutely, and sometimes we'll have to not trick people into discovering that,
Yeah.
but change the environment, the normal triggers that we have. You know, we're pressurized by work, by school, by whatever the environment is. But when you take people out of that normal environment in which they've created these stories about who they are and who they can't be, perhaps, take them to a different environment, like in a woodland or on a beach somewhere, and let's create a bit of art in this environment, or create a bit of a scenario around, okay, let's survive. This is, you know, a bit of Bear Grylls type of thing, you know.
Yeah.
And people seem to really enjoy it and tap into something that's quite innate. I'm not
Yes.
teaching them new things. I'm just reminding them it's in our DNA to survive.
Yeah.
And it's a great opportunity to tap into that. You've got a question here.
Well, yeah. My background's media, and I consider myself to be a creative. In fact, my nickname at one point was Head of Harebrained Schemes, because the way I used to look at the media world is perceived as being very sexy and creative, but there's a lot of basics to it. You know, how do you get an idea, and how do you take that idea and transfer it into something that's meaningful? And I often used to say to people, well, come on, just what's the idea? Someone else can pick up a pen or a pencil and maybe, you know, scamp it out. But it's just getting to give them that confidence to say, well, hang on, I've got an idea. And I just love that. And if you have an ability to get people to bring those ideas so they don't feel stupid. That was one of the problems we encountered as an organisation, in a big multi-million pound turnover organisation. People were frightened to put themselves forward in case they looked stupid. And believe you me, nobody's stupid if they've got a good idea.
Absolutely. It's that old, I mean, I don't even like this term, which is imposter syndrome. It sounds like a disease. No, we don't suffer from that.
Absolutely.
It's just lack of confidence. And what is confidence but doing something so many times that you become confident in it? That's
Absolutely.
all confidence is, you know. And
Love it.
yeah, and when you talked about motivation and drive before, you know, it's autonomy is a key element of that. And I think when you're in charge of your own story and how your own story can develop and grow, that gives you some autonomy that no one can take away from you.
I also think encouragement is a big part of any sort of, I'm going to use the word, educational view on life. And, you know, too many times I've seen people who have walked away because they had lost the confidence at some point in the journey, or there wasn't sufficient encouragement from those who are helping you get through that journey. And I believe anybody who can bring that encouragement and get you to feel good about your idea, however people perceive that idea to be, I think that's a skill in itself.
It is, and there's a lot of talk, isn't there, about innovation, which is scary for some people, because they think, well, how can I possibly be innovative? Well, innovation is only the manifestation of a creative idea. That's it, you know. And I think sometimes taking people out of their normal environment, give them some adventurous experience, can trigger that element of creativity that's in us all. I remember the first survival course I ever went on to with my son, and the culmination of the course, we had to build a shelter. We had to, out of branches and stuff. And there was a lot of youngsters on this course, young macho guys, and they were going around with the axes and the saws, chopping the thickest branches, which is not what you need. You need supple little branches. And I just stood and watched, and then for some reason, I don't know where it came from, I ended up shinning up this little sapling to the point where my weight bent it over, and I walked along to the end. I didn't have to climb up the tree, but then I just cut the end off, didn't damage the tree, and I was left with all this supple. Now, where did that come from? No, it's in us.
Yeah.
Or you watched Dick Van Dyke and Robinson Crusoe when you were a kid.
Well, that was probably it, actually, because that was one of my... I used to watch Robinson and hear the music in my head.
Yeah.
Now. When that used to come, that black and white.
That's going to be in your head all
Yeah.
night now.
You see what he's done?
Yeah, and then go and play in the back garden and play it out. But there's nothing more pleasurable than taking people into that environment and teaching them how to light a fire and using a primitive method. You know, man make fire, and when they blow into that straw, into that burning ember, and create a flame, people light up. It's very, very empowering.
Right, that's it.
Right.
Outside fire.
We're doing it. So let's take a break because I think we need to talk more about that in a minute. So we'll take a break and we'll come back